Welcome to Scorched Earth and a general reading for the sign of Capricorn, Sun, Moon or Ascendant for the month of July. I hope you are well. Using the Llewellyn deck for you today. Before we begin, if the reading resonates with you and you'd like to go a little bit deeper, there will be an extended that you can access at the end. That's first link in the description box. Second link in the description box is to the to my private community, the Order of the Phoenix, over on Circle. You can get access to all the extended content for no extra cost, plus hang out with a truly extraordinary group of people, and little classes and tarot clinics and all sorts of things over there. So if you're interested in that, please do feel free to avail yourself of that link. Right, Cappy, let's see what's going on with you. Can I have 3 cards for Capricorn, please? Right, there's the first card. We have the Hermit in your recent past. Let me just flip this around so you can see what I'm looking at. What about current energy for... Oh, thank you. We have the Page of Pentacles. And what about what's coming towards Capricorn, please, in July? Wow, okay, High Priestess. Now, straight from the off, we can see whatever's going on with you at the moment. There's a lot of internal shifting going around. You know, you've got the 2 most passive cards in the tarot, and 2 that very much speak about, well, an internal journey and internal wisdom, internal knowledge sort of coming through. There is a difference between wisdom and knowledge, and I'm sure we'll get to that at some point fairly soon. But at the bottom of the deck, we have the 9 of Cups. And it seems to me that where you are right now, and likely what is going to occupy a considerable part of July for you, is the assessment of the 9 of Cups. What does this actually mean to you? And how are you going to start implementing it into your life? What do we have underneath there? We have the Page of Cups. So we have double pages. Not quite as profound an energy as aces, but still considerable. Because the way that I see the pages is they take something that you already have and they either shift you off in a different direction to explore that, or they allow the energies to shape you somewhat. And since the emphasis seems to be very much on the internal for you, I feel like there's a bit of shaping of circumstance that's going on, and reflection and consideration about what that means for you. So yeah, I'm just checking that's the right deck that we're going to use to clarify. Of course it is. There you are at the bottom, like the Queen of Pentacles. Let's just give these a shuffle. And see why these cards are here. Tell me about the Hermit, please. Thank you. There's the first one. We have the Magician. Magician's been getting quite an outing in these readings. Not just for you, but for a few people. Tell me about the Hermit, please. Thank you. Oh, wow. Just got goosebumps there, Cappy. Right, what about the Page of Pentacles? We have the 9 of Swords. I have to confess, I'm not surprised to see that. I did get a kind of tinge of it somewhere in the meditation before I started the reading. And the 7 of Pentacles. Here's an interesting thing. I saw 2 cards in the meditation before I started your reading. One of them was the 2 of Swords, the other one was the 7 of Pentacles. So, let's see if that 2 of Swords gets an outing anyway. Tell me about the High Priestess. Thank you. We have the 2 of Pentacles. And we have the 6 of Swords in reverse. Interesting. And we do have the World at the bottom of this deck. Now, this doesn't change the flavour of the reading exactly. I'm far from it. I think it's actually quite supportive, but it does give us a really an added depth to what is going on here. So let's just all these up here. Grab my little stick. Where's it gone? There it is. Right. So, let's have a look what's underneath the World. Emperor. It's interesting because although the Emperor represents Aries, I always thought there was something slightly Capricornian about the energy of the Emperor anyway. It might have been because in my readings when I was married, my ex-husband always used to come up as the Emperor. But the qualities of the Emperor, you know, planning, strategy, control, those kind of things, it seem to me to be almost more Capricornian than they are Aries, although we can definitely see where they cross over. Anyhow, I like the fact that the Emperor is here, because no matter what's going on down here, and there are a few things going on down here that we'll get into, there seems to be an emphasis on kind of pulling your shit together. If I can put it as plainly as that, Capricorn, which is something that I think, you know, we're all interested in. I'm a Capricorn ascendant, yeah. But it's with regard to what feels to be the ending of a cycle, right? The World card is here. It always represents an end to a particular kind of cycle. And I think in some ways there has been an ending that has been thrust upon you, and there has been a great deal of resistance to that. The true ending is coming in a more accepting frame of mind. You know, it's like you could kind of be stuck at the end for quite a while, and if you're resisting it and saying, no, actually I don't want this end, I don't want things to change the way that they are changing, then you might hover there for a while until maybe the tower comes along or something like that, just kicks you in the shins, as the tower tends to do sometimes, right? The last push is that of acceptance. Remember, we've got two extremely passive cards at the top here. Now, with an ending in play, what's not being asked of you here is that you do anything too specific, right? We have a spectacular absence of wands cards. You know, there's no fire on the table here. This is not about what you do. This is not about the experiences that you're looking to draw towards you. It is more about the energy of acceptance. And the only place that we do not see the acceptance actually is here in the swords, which should tell you a lot, because it's talking about the fact that the resistance is mental, right? And I'm just going to throw this out here. In all likelihood, what we're needing to do is kind of step down the mind in all of this sort of kerfuffle, whatever this is that's going on. We will get into it in a minute, and start looking more at how you can adjust yourself to the circumstances rather than just the circumstances to you. And it feels like it could be a really, really powerful breakthrough for you, Capricorn. Again, kind of leaning into the emotional. We've got the High Priestess there and the Nine of Cups, both of them, you know, water element, and so talking about how you feel about things. And and the High Priestess is extremely powerful, right? It's an internal knowing. And like I said before, that the difference between knowledge and wisdom, I think, is that the wisdom is the ability to be able to apply the knowledge to you, to your circumstances, to whatever, and get yourself into a point where you can allow things to flow a little bit more than you have done. So the getting your shit together actually feels like an emotional getting your shit together more than anything else. Anyway, let's dive in properly here. So in your recent past, you have the Hermit. That's Virgo energy. You may or may not have been dealing with a Virgo. I don't think it's particularly relevant at this point, to be honest, because it's very much an energetic presentation. And the Hermit is variously lots of things, right? It can speak to solitude. It can speak to an awareness that there are things going on with you that one does not understand, and in order to understand them, we need to go within, right? We need to be looking to see what is actually going on here. And the wisdom of the Hermit, actually, that word is coming up again and again and again. The wisdom of the Hermit is that all of the answers to any question that you might have are to be found within you. And I'm not talking about questions like, what should I have for dinner? Or although that probably would be found within you. Right? Why is the sky blue? Things like that, right? Well, we're talking about, why do I feel the way that I do? Why do I think the way that I do? Why do people respond to me the way that they do? What is it that I want to manifest for myself? And we're bringing the Magician in here. I mean, the Magician is a powerful card of creating your own reality, right? The Magician says you have all the tools that you need to do whatever it is that you're needing to do. I mean, maybe you have all the tools to find the answers that you are looking for. That's one way of interpreting this. But this Queen of Pentacles feels really quite forlorn to me. There's a sadness on her face, and sometimes I see it and sometimes I don't, but I'm really drawn to it here. The Pentacles suit really does deal with what is of value, right? Now, I see Pentacles as energetic currency, so anything that you are capable of investing becomes a Pentacle. But there's also this dual interpretation of what you perceive to be of value. Now, this takes on a particularly strong resonance for me when it's a Capricorn card, and I'm talking to you, Capricorn, because then we have notions of identity. Like, who am I? What do I value? What is important to me? How do I feel about myself? How do I invest in myself? Do I know who I am? And I think that the notion of value itself is starting to take on a rather different hue for you. You know, we spoke quite a bit at the beginning of the year about core values and what it was that you stood for and your value system and all that sort of thing, which to a Capricorn is very, very important, right? Capricorn and Saturn as well, we're going to pull it in there, does represent, you know, rules, restrictions, structure, the rules of the game. And I think the movement from Pluto out of your sign and into Aquarius has discombobulated you a little bit. Now it's come back into your sign. It feels like you've got an opportunity to revise all of those things that we just talked about, to see how you can adjust yourself to fit the rules of the new game that is now starting to unfold in the world. Now, you know, Pluto is going to come out of your sign again in, I think it's January next year. And it's going to sit in Aquarius for a few months, and then it's going to bounce back into Capricorn. And one cannot help but assume that there's some fairly profound evolution of self that is going on in the moment of those transits. As you know, Pluto's tracking backwards and forwards over this critical degree of Capricorn and the critical degree of, well, you know, the initial degrees of Aquarius. I want to pull out another deck. Yes, night sun's coming out here. Because the question of whether what you have manifested for yourself is now in alignment with who you are, and maybe it's more importantly who you want to be. Like, there's so much assessment and reassessment and reflection and what the fuck is going on and what does all of this mean for me, that it feels to me like you're almost questioning the value of what you have manifested for yourself now. And maybe it seemed like perfection. Maybe it seemed like this was exactly everything that you always wanted, and you got the thing that you always wanted, and now all of a sudden it doesn't seem to sit with you the way that you thought it would. Tell me about the Magician and the Queen of Pentacles, please. We've got the Nine of Pentacles in reverse, which is quite interesting. And the Page of Pentacles. Okay. Fucking hell. And two reversed cards. We've got the Five of Swords, and we've got the Devil in reverse. Now, that in and of itself is quite interesting, right? We've got the Ten of Cups now sitting at the bottom of the deck, and we've got this sense of community, right? The Ten of Cups for me represents an emotional collective that is comprised of more than just you and one other person, right? So we could be talking about family, we could be talking about friends. I mean, it's you, Capricorn, so we could be talking about work colleagues, you know. It's the people that you spend the most time around that make you feel like everything's good, right? Everything is worth living. We've got that Nine of Cups there, which is interesting because it's almost like, I mean, we'll come to this in a second, but it's almost kind of like you're going back to the basics. We're going back to the core proposition of what Capricorn actually is. But these cards add an extra dimension to this because the Nine of Pentacles in reverse, well, let's talk about it in its upright first. And when it's in its upright, it talks about self-sufficiency and independence and all of those kind of things, all of those good things that we enjoy. And interestingly enough, I have this kind of weird axis that happens that I'm aware of, at least. Maybe I've just made it up, I don't know, but it's profound, that sits between the Nine of Pentacles and the Devil, in so much as the Devil represents codependency and neediness and all of those things that we don't think are, you know, particularly good. Abuse of any sort, toxicity, and we're talking about abuse, and we're talking about everything, right? The whole gamut of anything that is done to excess tends to be in the realm of the Devil, right? And coming at everything from a place of fear, like fuck, you know, that kind of thing. Whereas the Nine of Pentacles even though it's minor arcana, it's about the things that we do, right? The way that we manage our resources so that we act as a counterpoint to the devil, right? It's kind of like, no, well, I'm not going to exhibit codependent tendencies, or I'm not going to be addicted to anything, because that's where I lose the ability to be able to control my resources, whether it's money or whether it's time, energy generally, all those sorts of propositions. And yeah, I mean, it doesn't on the face of it make any sense, and yet always those two cards seem to sat natural opposition to each other, because the minor arcana is the stuff that you do day to day, and there's power in the stuff that you choose to do day to day. There's power in the way that you choose to dispense with your resources, energetic or otherwise, and the devil feeds on those things that you don't have control over, or at least makes him think that makes you think that you don't have control over. But then we have to address the fact that the devil is also the card of Capricorn, and here it is turning up in the reverse. I always feel like the devil has a slightly different flavour, obviously, when it's turning up for you, because it does represent your energy. The Nine of Pentacles in reverse feels like a realisation that things haven't been managed quite as well as they could have been. And the Devil in reverse, which ordinarily would have been a really, really positive card for any other sign that it came up for, feels to me like a little bit of a loss of self, right? Which would explain why the Hermit's here, because you're looking for self, right? What do I stand for? Who am I? What are my emotions? What is the totality of my experience as a Capricorn, and what does that say about me in the middle of it? I like the fact that the Page of Pentacles has shown up, not least because he's already on the table, right? So we're kind of doubling down on that energy. But the fact that he's here, right, and that energy of initiation, like I said, it is there. It's strong. It's not as strong as an ace, but it is there, and it's taking something that you already have and looking to mould it into a different direction, or be moulded by it. We've got this sense of, well, how can I take what I already have and reshape it into something else? And then I like the fact that the Five of Swords is here in reverse as well, because the Five of Swords is the cognitive loops, it's the Pyrrhic victories, it's the arguments, it's the mental instability. And I don't mean that to sound as harsh as it does, but Five is instability, and the swords are the mental processes, right? That has had your thought, your streams of thought going one way when actually they could have gone another. When it shows up in the reverse, what we've got is a stabilization of that. So we're looking for answers, and that's a very powerful thing to do. There's awareness that your identity is not perhaps quite as fixed as you thought it was, and it doesn't, or maybe it's being too fixed in the middle of things that are changing quite rapidly for you. And it seems like you've become very focused on trying to work out who the fuck you are, essentially. And I like this, because it's for the best possible reasons. I said this Queen of Pentacles looks sad. She's got a pentacle on her lap and she's capable of investing it, and that's great. But she feels a bit forlorn. And I think it's because what has been manifested hasn't really left you feeling as in control as your dominion as you hoped that it would, right? There's something missing here. It feels a little bit empty. And now with events starting to increase in speed, certainly, but it's like the rapid unfolding of events that are just making you feel like you're not quite as in control of everything as you should be. And it's like, well, I should have all the resources to be able to deal with this, but this particular basket is empty and I don't understand why it's empty. It shouldn't be, that could make you fold in on yourself. But I don't think it has. It's more a case of, how do I fix this, right? And there might be a bit of furious mental energy going into, how do I fix this? But at the moment, it still feels, or it has felt at least, that it's all a little bit woolly around the edges. You know, you've been looking for the crisp certainty that Capricorn likes to deal in, right? And it's just not been there. Like I said, the bucket is empty. And that's like, well, really? Nothing in there at all? And it's hard. It started off this whole set of thought processes that seem to be centered around, how the fuck do I fill this bucket back up again, right? It's huge. So we get into your present energy and we have the Page of Pentacles, and he is thankfully the right way up this time, but it comes with the Nine of Swords and the Seven of Pentacles, and I think you're still very much in the sifting phase here currently as you're looking at this, because the Page of Pentacles is that desire, right, to do so. Or maybe it is you have found the value that you were looking for. These are the things that are actually important to me. These are the things that are actually in alignment with my core values. These are the things that I can use to structure a new reality for myself. But we've got the Nine of Swords and the Seven of Pentacles down there. Now, the Seven of Pentacles is particularly important for me because it does represent an awareness that things aren't playing out the way that you thought that they would, the way that you wanted them to, right? Quite simply, it's the understanding that something is wrong in your environment and it needs changing. Now, often, and to this end, that's why I'm glad to see the Hermit and the High Priestess putting in an appearance here. More often than not, the thing that needs to change is us, but it's usually the last thing that we come to as a solution for a particular issue that we're having. It's like, well, you know, maybe I just need to earn a little bit more money, or maybe I need to pull my belt in, maybe I need to be a bit more disciplined about something, you know. Well, no, that would be about you. You know, we're looking for ways to affect the material environment first. And then when we've exhausted all of those possibilities and things still have not changed, in fact, maybe things have got more difficult, then we say, maybe the problem is in here. Maybe it's something to do with me, right? And this Nine of Swords, which is, you know, it's a really difficult card when you look at it there. I mean, we've all been in situations where insomnia is a thing, overthinking is a thing, you know, maybe it's even depression. I mean, this card can cover everything from being a bit worried about something right the way down to, you know, chronic clinical depression, maybe even mental illness, actually. Excuse me. But the meaning that actually sits at the heart of this card is about perspective. Now, I've gone into this before, my reasons for thinking this, and it all sort of centres around the positioning of the swords. It's the only card in this tarot deck where the swords are horizontal. There's a neutrality to the swords. And yet this woman is still in the dark, absolutely like, fuck, everything's terrible. So it comes to speak to me about perspective. It's the way that you think. Maybe it's the, for some of you, it will be the dominance of your thinking rather than your feeling or even your doing that is causing the problem. Now, let's just pull another card for this Nine of Swords here. Yeah. So we've got the Queen of Cups, who's kind of lying sideways across this. And we've got the High Priestess again. Right? We've got these two very passive cards showing up to clarify this. You know, for some of you, the issue will be that you simply haven't done enough. You might have buried your head in the sand a little bit. You haven't done enough to shift your own pattern of thinking. And for others of you, although this effectively ends up being the same thing, there's been a refusal to accept the way that things are changing. You know, both the High Priestess and the Queen of Cups both represent receptivity. Queen of Cups is water of water, and you know, that is by definition passive and receptive. Let it come in. The High Priestess is the archetype of being passive and accepting, because she just allows everything to move through her. She is effectively a conduit. So whether the question has been too much passivity or not enough passivity, it does seem to all cycle around this idea of passivity. Now, you've got the High Priestess twice on the table here, and that's interesting. Simply because there is so much acceptance that is required of you. This Queen of Cups is Cancer, and that's your opposite sign in the zodiac. And when she's operating effectively, she should be that way up. But she's not. I mean, she's not completely closed down, because otherwise she would be appearing in the reverse, but she's coming out sideways, which means that there's a block, there's an obstacle here. And I would go as far as to say it is the mind that is providing the block. It is the mind that is obstructing the free flow of emotion that should be accompanying your travelling towards the end of this particular cycle. Tell me about this Seven of Pentacles, please. We've got the Hierophant there. Now, I mean, the Hierophant is, I've come to see it as a wonderful card. It didn't get on with it for the longest time, but I'm softening towards it now. But to take in, you know, the more shadowy aspects of this energy, it is fixed, it is rigid, it is inflexible. And it sits somewhat counter to this more fluid motion of the High Priestess, this fluid motion of the Queen of Cups. It's a sense of holding on to things so that they remain as they always have been, because they have always been that way. Like, there's a resistance to change here, Capricorn. Now, I know you've got some really decent astrology that is happening at you. I forget off the top of my head what it is, but I think that's something to do with Venus being in your fifth house, which is all to do with, you know, joy and fun and children, I think, as well. You know, it's pulling up all of those, and you have, or the energies rather, support you moving into a lighter frame of mind, you know, where fun and joy and happiness and children and things that are of a you know, can be experienced on a level of childlike wonder and joy are actually open to you. But it seems to me like there's something here that's got to give a little bit first. Like I said, you're not totally closed down to it, but there are obstructions. And there's resistance to change, you know, and if we could use one example, I guess, of something that has been, at least in recent history for humans, rigid and inflexible, it would be organised religion. Maybe it's even ideas of hierarchy and status and things like that. Like, this rigidity isn't serving you, Capricorn, and it feels like there's confusion and fear and uncertainty about the future in a way that is not really fitting with your position as a cardinal sign, right? You're always pointing the way, and you know, this trope about Capricorns having a 5-year plan is, it might be a little bit stereotypical, but I know a number of Capricorns who have 5-year plans and they achieve them. But if the rules of the game are changing, it would make sense that you're going to have to bone up on a whole new language, almost a whole new way of identifying yourself. And I do think that it has to be characterized by a far more open and receptive demeanor towards your own emotions. It's almost like your emotions are the key to everything. And yes, there is uncertainty here. The High Priestess isn't going to give you the certainty, even though she probably knows exactly what's going to happen. She's asking you to open up and trust the process. You know, the things that are trying to shake free, shake loose of you are doing so for a reason. And it's never in the spirit of punishment. I would go as far as to say, actually, the only one who is really punishing themselves here is you, Capricorn, because of this Nine of Swords. But you're also blessed in the same way with the ability to be able to take control and provide certainty for yourself by recognizing that it is your mind that is causing the problem here. And in the spirit of looking for a solution, like I said, it's you that changes, not the situation around you, because the situation around you is actually in a state of flux anyway. It's trying to push towards completion, to ending. It's trying to push you off into a whole new cycle of being. And this resistance to that, because there's so much uncertainty, and because there's no idea, really, it seems to me, in your mind of what the future might actually hold. That you seem to be just going over the same bit over and over again, but there's like the light's getting in here somewhere, Capricorn, for sure. Now, when we move into July, we've got that High Priestess archetype there again, right? Very passive, very reflective, very, very internal, very Piscean, right? And the energy of Pisces wants to merge. It wants to feel its way around everyone. And I would imagine that that's something that feels a bit like a violation to you. You know, why would I want to feel everybody else's shit? I don't want to feel my own. But it starts with you. Like, feeling your own stuff is going to be the important thing here. And we go straight down to this Two of Pentacles, right? We've got this Two of Pentacles. For me, is the card that varies the most between tarot decks. You know, like, sometimes you've got people pulling off these mad gymnastic feats and they look filled with joy that they're pulling it off, right? Others look slightly stricken. You know, there's this big fucking maelstrom going on in the background here. The rolling of the water, the roller coaster ride of the emotions, being something that this character here in the Two of Pentacles is just like, I'm not sure I'm fucking able to do this, but somehow you are doing it. It's not comfortable, but it's a very necessary step before you can start building again, which is what we see in the Three of Pentacles. And actually in the Three of Pentacles, the emphasis is on building with other people. A lot of this is about making sure that all of your internal ships are in a row, as it were, docks, whatever, to take you to the next step. But the ending is here. The interesting thing is, this Six of Swords is asking you to go back and revisit. Now, this way round, you see we've got this choppy water here, and we've got this water that's almost like glass on the other side, right? The received wisdom of this card is that we're moving away from what has been very, very difficult into calmer waters, right? We understand what that means metaphorically. And when it shows up in the reverse, it's asking you to go back. It's asking you to revisit. Now, the fact that it is swords is really important. It's not cups, right? We're not going back to a situation that you have emotionally left behind, grown from, you know, gone, that's good, I'm off. We're, because when the Eight of Cups appears, it's a sense that you have done the work where all of this stuff is concerned, and it's okay, you can leave that behind now and you can start heading towards your Nine of Cups. This is about the thought processes, this is about the mental processes, right? We've got that Five of Swords there, obviously the Six of Swords follows on from it, but it's this feeling of tracking back to the step before, we're going back to the building blocks of who we actually are. You know, you've got the Queen of Pentacles here, but then you've got the Page of Pentacles showing up here. It's like, I've got to take a couple of steps back here, because the world is changing around me, my circumstances are changing around me, and I don't feel equipped to be able to keep up with it. Until you are, which is the point. You know, I haven't met a Capricorn yet that wasn't incredibly fucking capable, but almost to a man, to a woman, every single one of them, I have quite a lot of Capricorns in my life, has this kind of stickiness around shit that is emotional. It's like, I don't like that. I'll put it in a box and I'm going to push it away. And I'm not talking about your day-to-day emotional stuff, right? Because sometimes Capricorns misunderstand what I'm saying there, right? You have your normal day-to-day operation of emotional stuff, right? You can deal with people very well. Capricorns actually are, I like Capricorns. You're very dry, you've got a cool sense of humour, right? You're fun to be around, actually. I'm talking about the really deep stuff. The stuff that has really, really bothered you, that has caused you some level of trauma at some point in your past, right? That tends to get wrapped up in a box and put under the stairs. Fuck you, I'm not going to think about that anymore, kind of thing, right? I need to focus on what I'm doing here instead. But the way that the energies are kind of swimming around you at the moment, they're like, you know, this Piscean energy of being like you can't have any boundaries here. You can't, boundaries is the wrong word. You can't have any walls here. Right? Pisces wants you to feel everything. Oh shit, Saturn is in Pisces, right? Pisces wants to break down anything that is dividing here. And the division has been in you. Now, it might be that your external experience is that you've become divided from the people that you would wish to be connected to. But the question of how much that is them and how much that is you is one that is really now kind of swimming into focus, as it were. The energy of Pisces is saying, like, you have to get the box out from under the stairs and you have to go back and have a look at it, because whether you know it or not, there's a lot about the way that you're thinking about everything, thinking about yourself, thinking about your situation, thinking about your future, that is contained within there, right? There's the originating point is in there. And until you go back and open, as it were, Pandora's box and have a look at what's inside, you're not removing the division. You're keeping walls up there. And Pisces, for all people think it's a wishy-washy sign, it's not. It's really, really powerful. And they're persistent as fuck. Right? Pisces, really, really persistent. When it's something that they believe in, right? It's something that they want. And the energy of Pisces, at its core, wants everything broken down. Right? Big open space, big vast ocean to swim around it. Well, that's Two of Pentacles and Six of Swords in reverse. What's going on? Does Capricorn have to go back to? If I had a mic, I'd drop it right now, Capricorn. Because this, I can't think of a more spot-on card, more spot-on energy to point you towards what it is that this Piscean energy is trying to show you about yourself, right? It's always about the relationship with self. I know so many Capricorns, like I said, most of them not very happy with themselves. Right? That energy of peace and contentment is not something that tends to characterize the Capricorn experience. And for good reason. I mean, I think most of you have used that as fuel to propel yourself forward, to achieve in other spheres, other sectors, right? A lot of it work driven. But the question remains, until you can become your own best friend, until you can love yourself, and you're all going to be flinching at that because, you know, Capricorn ascendant. Until you can hold yourself with gentle hands and say, I am worthy, just by virtue of my existence, I am worthy of being here, I am valid, I am all of these things. But some of the processes, mental, whatever, definitely emotional, that I have going on here are inefficient. They're no good. They're no good for the paradigm that is now dawning on me. And in some ways, you've got kind of like a heads up and being able to deal with this. Yeah. It's like there's lines of communication that are desperately trying to be opened with bits of you that you don't talk to. And like ever was it those Capricorn, I mean, there's a lot of stuff here that I've been saying to you for at least a year, possibly 2 years now. And that's not to say that you haven't been doing the work, but I think that most of you underestimate your own depth. You're quite happy to accept a level of perceived competence by everybody else at what it is that you do, what it is that you invest in. Because, yeah, fuck, if you want something done, give it to a Capricorn, right? Might not be done fast, but it will be done so fucking perfectly. It'll be done efficiently. But when it comes to just the state of being, it seems to be something that Capricorns really do have a problem with. And we can see how that would make it problematic for you to be absolutely in the moment, because your mind is always elsewhere. I think the dominance of the mind has been a problem for you. And I think this Pisces energy, who is now sitting in your ruling planet, I think it's just gone retrograde as well, is asking you literally to go back and look at the systems that you use, to operate. Look at, who you are and what you bring, what you consider to be valuable, who you want to have around you, what kind of things you want to feel. Rather than do, rather than achieve, rather than this, what do you want to feel? Because July is about sorting that out for yourself. Now, if your 5th house is going to be getting lit up, which I think, if I remember correctly, that is what it is. Oh, it's really interesting. I got a email newsletter from Astrolada, who's an astrologer on YouTube. She's cool. Like, her voice actually, though, just makes me feel sleepy. She just is such a musical, kind of soporific voice, and I'm just like, oh god, right. So I have to listen to the things that she says like 10 times before it actually gets into my brain. But when she writes things, it's totally different. And she was saying that the 4th house, the 8th house, and the 12th house, maybe, are the gates to transformation, or something like that. But the 1st house, the 5th house, and the 9th house, I think, if I'm remembering this correctly, are the houses of self-actualization. So with this activity happening on your 5th house, there's an opportunity for self-actualization here, right? We're talking about the ability that you have to cast away from you what you have understood about what society wanted from you, or family wanted from you, parents wanted from you, partners wanted from you, in favour of recognizing who you actually are. Now, you are not your emotions. That's very, very important. They're a very separate thing to you, and that's why in a state of meditation you can sit and observe your emotions going past, and they can tell you a lot about the way that you process emotional information, right? And actually, in that more detached state, it's easier to see where we get stuck in loops with things, right? Where we run up constantly and consistently against brick walls. However, if you deprive yourself of the input that you can get from seeing your emotions, and then correspondingly, being able to get to a point where you can master your emotions, then there's a whole, there's the 2 of Swords, right? It's implied, it's not on the table, but it's implied. There's a whole data set, if you will, that you're completely depriving yourself of in pursuit of making every decision that you make in terms of the way that you run your life. Now, this Ace of Cups and Knight of Swords being the transmission of information, is a dialogue that is wanting to be opened between who you are at the core, your emotional responses to things and your conscious mind right now. You know, this is all saying go back to the way that you think, because here is where the big insights can happen. It is not normal, it is normal actually, but it's not healthy for you to hold yourself with contempt. It's not healthy for you to view yourself as something that needs to be kind of pushed out of the way in pursuit of what other people have told you is valuable. You know, the King of Swords is at the bottom of the deck here, and it is all about the clarity of thought. You know, where there is a lack of clarity, it is for you to go find it. And there are a number of things that you are going to have to be very, well, there's the thing actually. The other thing that came up with those two cards in the meditation was radical honesty. You have to be radically honest with yourself in order to push through this last thing. Sorry, I'm just distracted because I was actually thinking about a conversation that I had with my 10-year-old daughter yesterday. We were looking at birth charts, and I was explaining to her, you know, why that very end degree is kind of important in any science. It's like, you know, you push so far, but it's the last push. You have to really, really push yourself through, and then you pop out the other side. That's where you are, it seems to me. And it feels like you've tried to work with everything other than what's right at the very core of you to get past this hurdle. But like, it is the thing. It's you have to go through rather than around. And your own progress is kind of held in abeyance whilst there's been the reluctance to go there with that. But the cards are very clear. It's time to revisit that. It's time to see how your emotional state has informed your particular pattern of thinking, and how that particular pattern of thinking has then refused to allow the emotions to come in, and has caused correspondingly levels of confusion around why things aren't quite as certain as they were. I mean, we're in very uncertain times anyway. It's very difficult to make a 5-year plan when you don't know where the fuck you are right now. But either way, it's like understanding that your emotions are feeding your thoughts rather than your thoughts feeding your emotions, which is what it is that you've been trying to do for the longest time. I mean, there's so much more here, Capricorn. We're going to go and have a look at it in the extended now. So if you want to join me, you're very welcome to do so. You can do that over on Circle. You can do it on Vimeo. It's up to you. But if neither of those apply and you're not interested, that's absolutely fine. What I just want to really make you understand is like, your success is so close. You don't have to fight it. In fact, that's where you become successful. This is let this wash over you. And the fear of what it might bring up is worse than what it will actually bring up. I can tell you that 100%. There might be an initial shock, but the need to be radically honest with yourself is so important. Like the honest understanding of your own feelings. That's where the clarity comes. Right? That's where you're going to be able to think straight, as opposed to being kind of lost in the source, as you seem to be at the moment. But success is so very close. Right? And I know it sounds counterintuitive, but everything in this reading really does seem to be pushing towards being passive and just allowing everything to come up. And if you do resist it, then there's something that you have to be absolutely more passive about, right? Because it's always about leaning into the uncomfortable. Kind of a mixed bag for July, but in terms of experience, but by the end, considerably more clarity than you have now, and that's important. So anyway, I'm going to go now. Know that I love you all very, very much, and I'll see you soon.